What is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I am your hostess, doing the mostest, Givenchy, and we are here with the Gilded Age Season 1, Episode 6, titled Heads Have Rolled for Less. Now, we're just going to jump right into it. This is another filler episode, and honestly, by the end of this episode, I was like, okay, I can see why people would call this show like low stakes, and how it's just like super chill, it's super minimal. But as y'all have already been seeing, not only when I started off doing season 3 recaps and reviews and diving into the characters, but really diving into like the things that are brewing underneath the layers of the characters within season 1. And starting with season 3 and going back into season 1, there is so much underneath the carpet that I just can't help but to look underneath the drapery and the gowns and the petticoats instead of focusing on, you know, who's coming to tea, who's coming to the American Red Cross meeting, all of these other things. Like, when you really look at like the jealousies, when you look at the pick me, when you look at people just undercutting and undermining, trying to get ahead, there's nothing light about this show. But this might be my shortest review, mainly because there's just like less meat in this episode, but we're really laying out a lot of nuggets. So one of the first things that I really want to talk about, and we're going to kind of jump back and forth between George and Bertha. We're going to kind of wrap the show, this review, up around them a little bit before we get into my thoughts about some of the other things that was kind of happening in the background of this episode. But we are at the aftermath of the railroad incident, and 5 men have died. Now, Mrs. Barton, who is the head of the American Red Cross, she was talking, she was like, you know, good thing it's not, you know, women and children, otherwise like this would be like huge. And it's so crazy at how we are still looking at the performative nature of caring about bad things that happen to women and children when you look at the laws and crimes against women and children even in 2025. Like, not a lot happens, right? You're getting stalked, you're getting, you know, beaten, abused, all types of stuff. And it's like, oh, they get probation, they get 6 months this, they get a slap on the wrist or whatever. But for some reason, since the dawn of time, it's like, you know, save the women and children, save the women and children. But for what? It's fake. And so that's just something, that's just my 2 cents about it, because I keep saying the world does not care about women and children. Everything is out here to be performative, because when you really look at the injustices that's held towards this group and this demographic of people, your actions are speaking way louder than words. But okay, I guess it should be good that only 5 men died, but it really ain't that good, because when Clay is out here doing some recon for George, he finds out that the axles that were used to build the railroad, not the railroad, but the carts and connecting them together, they were old and rusted, and they were purposely cheap and damaged and old used parts, and it ended up just basically imploding. So at this point in time, you know, George is fucked, right? Like, royally fucked, because as they continue to do a little bit more digging, he's trying to keep this information out of the papers, even though, you know, Agnes and them, people are calling them murderers as if they were driving the train. The guy who did it says that he has written proof that George signed off on it. So y'all already know what I'm gonna say. Parallels, right? Here is George, kind of in a sticky situation with his work, just like he was in season 3 when that motherfucker was going broke and it was about to lose everything. And now in this episode, we are getting a George that is snapping off on Bertha. Very different than the George that we saw in episodes 1 and 2 of the season. And now we're in episode 6, and we're back in that space where Bertha's trying to tell him like, hey, Ward McAllister is coming over, like looking like we're really making some headway, and he's basically like, do I give a fuck about some man coming over here to eat dinner and you schmoozing? I don't care about society. I don't care about none of those other things. Like, people are dead, girl. Kim, there are people dying in Africa. Like, relax. And I like that Bertha was like, listen, this is important to me. The business of this home, the business of society is my business and is my job. And all of this also includes Gladys as well. So this is wrapped up in the stress from the people who have died, the business potentially imploding before he even really gets a good foot in the door, and him being caught up with the whole Gladys situation where Bertha is still not bringing her out into society, and they're both scheming to keep these boys away from her. And one of the things that Bertha tells George in this episode, kind of in the crux of the whole Gladys of it all, and you know, the emotions and the stress that's going on within him, is, you know, he's like, you can't keep her locked away forever. Like, basically, like, what about my daughter's feelings? And she's like, you can't get soft on me now, like, after how far that we've come. And he's like, trust me, nobody would ever accuse you of doing that. And then he goes and talks to Gladys, and Gladys is like, you're literally letting her puppeteer you. Like, you are this powerful man, you got all of this money, people fear you, and yet you can't even control your wife. Now, I want to sit here a little bit because y'all already know what happened in season 3. We're not even going to go back there. But Gladys is kind of playing this, I'm just a normal girl and I don't know how to do anything except stand here and get my dress put on and get my hair done, and I know how to brush my hair and I know how to sip tea. Like, I'm not special and I'm not nothing. But father, you're a man and you're gonna let her emasculate you like this? Like, I'm not saying it's on purpose, because we also know what Gladys is capable of by the time we get to season 3, where she talks to Bertha face to face and was like, what about your values, right? So we know that Gladys eventually is going to take it there. But I think this is the birth of Gladys kind of being, she grown according to society, but using the child's manipulation tactics when you're playing the mom against the dad, and to use his masculinity as the punching bag here, and wield her words and say that you can't control your wife in an argument where you, a young woman, is seeking to have control released from you. Y'all see how that's kind of like working like that? Like, she wants her mother to not control her, but she wants her father to control her wife in a society where the new money people are pushing forward to remove the restrictions from women in the first place. So Gladys is using this to her own advantage to kind of plant some seeds into George's mind. And she don't know that the railroad is going under. She don't know anything about that. Like, I think they do a pretty good job at protecting their children and keeping their children out of like grown folks' business and like their own personal business. And I do like admire that. But as we see going forward, especially in season 3, where you have a George that's to the point where he's moved out and he doesn't know if this relationship is going to continue to go, that fracture I've been talking about, y'all, it is here. And I'm going to keep saying it. I know some people in the season 3 comments disagree. I'm going to keep saying it. There is a seed of jealousy and a seed of insecurity planted right next to each other inside of George. And those roots are taking place. Because I'm looking at a Bertha that's been Bertha. I'm looking at a Bertha that you been knew even when you was broke. This woman has not changed. And honestly, even with the money, you can still tell that money didn't necessarily make her change. It just gave her access. But she's been this way when she didn't have any money, and she's this way now at the top of the food chain in society. But y'all know when people be like, oh, money changed you. I say all the time, money does not change you. Money literally solidifies you and grounds you into the person that you knew you always wanted to be once you got your hands on money. And for some people, it seems like they turn into other people when really they were just biding their time to be able to have the power and to abuse that power or to throw things around in a way so that they can feel superior than other people. Because once they go back broke, here comes them being mean again. And then after they're done being mean, then they're going to soften up a little bit because they're going to need you to hold it down until they can get back on top again. And yeah, it's the 1800s and everything is cute and there's all these pretty words, but George is not fooling me. You are an insecure, jealous man, because the moment things are going south, you are now turning your frustrations inward towards your wife and the things that she's doing for y'all's children. And now you mad at her for it. But you just sat at that dinner table and y'all both talked about it and you agreed and you did it. She didn't hold a gun to your head. She didn't force you to do it. She's having these conversations with you as her husband, as two equals in heads of this household. But now you're blaming her. That don't make no sense. And I love that Gladys was even like, you sat there and did it. And then that's when he finally was like, because at first he was like, oh, well, your mother thought it was best. She's like, well, you're the one who told him that you could do all these other things and to not come back. And George was like, who told you that? And Gladys was like, it's right here in this letter. And then that's when he backtracked and was like, well, you know, we both think that this is what's best for you and all these other things. So he tried to throw Bertha under the bus. But then when Gladys called him out on it, then it's like, oh, it's a we thing. I see what you're doing, George. I don't fuck with it. And it lets me know that where you are in season 3 and even if the relationship ends, I still stand beside it. Bertha is gonna be all right, because this right here is my swag. And it is Bertha's. Like, watching her climb is so admirable. This got to be one of the most ambitious women I think we've ever seen written on TV, and I fucks with it. I was gonna say more ambitious, like the most ambitious on HBO, but honestly, can't nobody outdo Cersei Lannister. Like, I don't even know. But shout out to you, HBO. Y'all always be having some ambitious women who can come off cutthroat and ruthless sometimes, and you know, I'm team Big Bertha, guys. I have made the switch. I'm understanding her backstory. I am seeing it from an objective view. I don't necessarily agree with her methods, but I'm going to stick beside her. Like, that's where we're going to be at for that. So kind of want to kind of start that off there, because that really blankets the entire episode, is seeing a lot of these other cracks and a lot of these fissures within the relationship. I mean, the series basically involves and is surrounded by their relationship. But speaking of relationships, Mr. Rakes is, you know, traipsing around town, still kind of keeping Marian a little bit strung along, but she not really seeing that she's strung along. But shout out to Peggy and Agnes for being the people in her ear and telling her, like, hey girl, this ain't looking like nothing that's permanent or whatever. And Peggy is one of the first ones to bring this up. And, you know, Marian's like, you know what? Like, what is it that you have to say? And Peggy was like, listen, I'm not going to tell you what to do, girl, because you're grown. But none of the stuff that he said to you sounds like somebody who's serious, nor does it sound like anybody who has a plan. And in this society, girl, the men take care of the women. It just is what it is. And this man don't sound like he could provide for you. He can give you a good time, but he could also give you a headache, girl. And that's not something that you want. And so coming from Peggy, it's just like, okay, well, you know, cool, let's think about it. But Agnes is adamant against Mr. Rakes and Marian. So of course, she not hearing it. And in a sense, the way that you have Peggy and her father kind of with a career path, you got Agnes and Marian with her love life. And Agnes is like, listen, little girl, I don't care how many people like Mr. Rakes. Girl, the Pope can come here and tell me that Mr. Rakes is the best thing since we invented the oven and started slicing warm bread. I'm telling you, that man is a hoe. He is a rolling stone. He is an opportunist. And you will be disappointed. I promise you. And even Ada was like, Agnes, sis, aren't you being a little bit too hard? And she was like, look, she can be mad at me right now, and honestly, don't nobody like me anyway, so I'm cool on all of that lovey-dovey stuff. But when he hurts her feelings, she will see what's going on. And so she ends up going over to Mrs. Chamberlain's house to kind of get some information and kind of convince her to get on the board, or at least to contribute to the American Red Cross. And Marian ends up opening up to her, and Mrs. Chamberlain shockingly is like agreeing with Peggy and Agnes, but I like that she allowed and created a safe space for Marian to use her home as an opportunity to really get to know this guy. Because like even Miss Chamberlain said, look, I'm gonna be real with you, the rumors are true. I was sleeping with a married man while his wife was still alive, and you know, I had a baby and everything like that. And, you know, things was all cool when my husband was alive, but once he died, don't nobody fuck with me no more. But it was all worth it because I genuinely loved this man, and this man genuinely loved me, and he took care of me. What I'm hearing about this Mr. Rakes guy, you know, you don't really know him like that. So let's not alienate our family and our friends behind some fleeting feelings. So here's what I'm gonna do. You said that you only get to spend like 2-3 minutes with him. So tell me when you want him to come to my house, and I will leave the space open for you to figure out on your own. Like, is it somebody that you want to have a future with? Or are you just feeling the little butterflies in these fleeting moments that you have when you have like quick little conversations? And I thought that was really sweet. And again, I do love that Marian is not really going with like the mold on everything. She talks to the people that society is basically shutting out, right? I forget the exact words that Agnes used this episode, but she really was basically calling people like degenerates and people who are climbing the social ladders who basically have like, she was like, you close the door and they knock out a window. You know, I wish we could just push the ladder down so they couldn't get in or something like that. But Marian doesn't do that. And even with her, you know, blunder with Peggy, you can tell that she's somebody that's trying to understand not only like the racial inequalities and injustices, but even society-wise. Like, shit don't make sense to her. And so I just genuinely enjoy that about her character. But speaking of injustices, okay, I love that, again, the continued keeping the difference in black life and white life at the forefront of everybody's minds. I love that that's a continuation, a part of the show, and we're not shying away from it. More specifically, Marian was trying to get picked up in a cab, and the cabbie was like, well, I'll take you, but I'm not gonna take her. And Marian was pissed, and Peggy was like, listen, that's cute, and I love that you just discovered injustice, but I've been living with it my whole life, so I'm gonna hail a cab, and if they stop, we good. And so just even that line right there, like when you think about allyship, again, this is America, this is white America, black America. When you think about it, it's like, it's cute that you like, rah, 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 Black Lives Matter and all of these other things. But sometimes people be taking allyship so fucking far as if the injustices just started today. And this goes back a couple of reviews ago when I said, all you need to do and the best thing you need to do is recognize that we are different and create a space for me and my differences in your life without trying to force me to conform or using words like, hey, well, maybe you should just do what they say, or maybe you should just not be as aggressive. Like, don't use stuff like that, right? Recognize that we've been dealing with this our entire lives. So as you receive it and as you are now being made aware of it, don't come back to us with your dissertations and your theses about it. Have a conversation about it, internalize it, look at it, and then call it out in your social settings where the majority of the people look like you. Don't bring it to me, because we already know. We already been fighting. And, you know, we're going to continue to fight the fight. But you going to like 1,000 on it and then bringing it to us as black people, that doesn't do anything. We're already tired, we're exhausted, and we don't have time to sift through your brand new emotions about inequality, right? Call it out with the people in your own life. That is how you can correct those things. Which brings me to Agnes and her mercurial nature of being like super classist, super elitist, but not racist. When Mrs. Armstrong came up in that room and was getting Agnes ready, Agnes said, listen, little girl, you don't think I know what's going on up in my house? Now, I may be aloof to some things. I am getting older. But what you about to stop doing is bringing your prejudices and your racism up about Peggy and trying to make sure that she don't have a job. Because it ain't got no place up in my house. And if you keep bringing it in my house, you can find yourself out of my house. Because here go Mrs. Armstrong. Oh, Peggy's article is making rounds and I fear that she's talking about us. Ma'am, did you even read the newspaper? No, because it's a black newspaper. So you're not going to read it. So what the fuck are you talking about? Bannister be clocking her. And I love that he going to continue to clock her for 3 seasons. I love this about them. And I love that Agnes looked her dead in her face and called a spade a spade. She didn't say anything like, I know that you don't take kind to Peggy. I know that you have your issues with Peggy. No, she said, are you bringing this to me because of your prejudices? Ain't no place up in it. Making a hard line in the sand that she does not do that in her house. And one thing Agnes don't do, she do not play about her stepdaughter, okay? She do not play about Peggy Scott Van Rhijn. Like, it's just not it. It's just not it. And so now that you kind of see like Mrs. Armstrong's motives and the fact that her life is literally crap and garbage, you really see that she goes out of her way to make everybody else's life the same way. Even when she clocked Enid and Oscar, she could have went to Agnes and just said like, hey, I saw Oscar and Enid together. I'm not really sure what's going on, but she didn't say that. You know, Agnes is already feeling embarrassed for going over to the Russell's house during their luncheon, and Marian and Aurora kind of had to like, hey girl, did you forget the time type of situation, so that she wouldn't further embarrass herself. So she's already kind of feeling down, right? She's feeling outside of herself, right? And Mrs. Armstrong, instead of just using that opportunity or just waiting until the next day to give this information, she says, it must be hard with all of these betrayals. So you are playing into the irrational emotions that Agnes is feeling behind Marian making a friendship with the Russells, and then using a word like this and then digging the knife in that she didn't know something else within her household. Like, that is so nasty and that is so shady. I'm actually really surprised that Mrs. Armstrong has a continued storyline through season 3, because that's crazy. But the actress is doing an incredible job. Not even gonna hold you. She does a lot. She holds a lot too. And honestly, Mrs. Armstrong is like a mirror of like the nastiest parts of Agnes. Maybe not the racist parts, but they are both strong women in the heads of their own household that everybody is relying on, and they don't have an outlet to be emotional, and they don't have the room to appear weak. So I see why Mrs. Armstrong is the lady's maid to Agnes. It makes sense. But Mrs. Armstrong is severely unhappy, and so she's going to make sure that everybody else around her is unhappy as well. And then my final thought, again, give me my spinoff of the AIDS, because no, Mr. Bannister selling out Agnes for $100, y'all. He was like, not only do I get to embarrass Mr. Church in his own house, but I get to make $100. Jack, you got it. And he went and made up some little story about some religious reason why he needed to see his lawyer during lunch. And he went over there, and y'all, Mr. Church cannot stand Mr. Bannister. And I just love this beef so much between Mr. Church, Mr. Bannister, and then I forget the chef's name, Bertha's chef, but they was not playing. And I really need to know who blabbed, who wrote that letter to Agnes that had her barging into their house and about to make a fool of herself when she saw Mr. Bannister over there. Now, my first thought is Enid, because when Marian saw him, Enid was standing behind her, and cinematography wise, why is Enid in frame if this piece is not important? But it also could be a red herring. Did Mrs. Armstrong find out about what Bannister was doing? Because he tried to make it seem like he, was going across the street and nobody knew, and the camera didn't go back on anybody else. But Mrs. Armstrong already came up from the basement and clocked Oscar and Enid during this episode. So during that scene, did she come up and clock Bannister sneaking and running into the gates in the entrance of the Russell's house? In this scenario, I don't think it's the obvious choice. I don't think it was Enid at all. Like, at all. I think it might be coming from inside of the Van Rhijn house. But that's just my 2 cents on that. I just love this beef, and I kind of want this beef to like really hit ahead until the Van Rhijn household needs Mr. Church. Like, I don't think they're gonna have like a friendship and a camaraderie until the Van Rhijn household has a need for the aides inside of the Russell's household for like some last minute thing that falls apart. Like maybe the Van Rhijn aides get sick or something like that, and a couple of people can't come to work. There's gonna have to be a coming together of both houses to see like what that looks like. Because by the time season 3 comes, there's a decent like respect between Mr. Church and Mr. Bannister. But I'm loving this beef so far with him. So there's that, guys. Season 1, episode 6. Heads have rolled for less. Like I said, this is gonna be short. It was gonna be to the point. I said a lot of things that were in my final thoughts, but the last thing that I will say that I was seeing throughout this episode is we're really starting to see that relationship between Gladys and Larry as siblings. So before there were like these little nuggets, he's sticking up for her, he's doing all these other things, but now Larry is making some concerted efforts to get his sister out of the house, and we know that they love each other down. And one of the first steps in that is getting her in the room and potentially building a friendship with Carrie Astor, to the point where Carrie even came over the house. Now, Larry is smart for this because he knows his mama needs Mrs. Astor to get in good graces so that she can be welcomed into society. It's not enough to just have Ward McAllister. He has to have the gay and the woman, okay? And so Larry doing this for Gladys, but also being a brother enough to know that Gladys needs real friends, and Carrie doesn't seem like a mean person. And one of the things that they bonded over at this crazy doll tea party, like it was literally actually dolls, at Mrs. Fish house, who is the town gossip, and we got an introduction of her as well, because I was wondering who she was and what her role was in season 3. But it seems like Mrs. Fish is gonna be that person in that space for Larry and Gladys to kind of sneak around behind their parents' backs. So kind of like a Mrs. Chamberlain for Marian, that's what Mrs. Fish is, I think, is what's going to happen, at least from what I'm gauging from season 3. Because she wasn't in it a lot in season 3, but she definitely knew the gossip, and she knew where Bertha's kids was when Bertha didn't know where her own kids was. And so this seems like this could be like that neutral ground for Gladys to start to develop her own thoughts, her own feelings, and really pull away from her mama and pull away from her household. And in Carrie, she finds a kinship in the fact that both of their mamas is getting on their damn nerves, and they just want to go out here and live their regular lives, and they can't. And so if they have to be imprisoned by their own mothers, at least they can, build a bond as cellmates with one another. So seeing Gladys develop a few more relationships with the people in town, I'm excited to see where her bite grows, because that what she did to George, she don't know that she didn't do it on purpose, but I think Gladys is going to reference that point, and that's really going to be a thing that builds and builds. And I'm really excited to see Gladys kind of start to use the things that she's collected from her parents as personality types and really dig into her mama and really bite into that relationship with her dad, because we already know leading up to season 3, he is just broken down about his relationship with his daughter. And the last thing I'll say about that, kind of keeping season 3 in mind, but with everything that's going on here in season 1, he's so torn about looking weak in his daughter's eyes. George hasn't really sat down and talked to his daughter. Not really. He's going in and he's, it's a we thing, and, me and your mom, we think these things, but you don't know if you're a disappointment in your daughter's eyes. She's mad, she's upset, but she's mad at her mom. And so him internalizing her being angry and being like, I'm a bad father and I'm a bad man and it's my wife's fault. My wife made me this way. It's strange what goes on inside of George's psyche and how he's filtering these things, and it's pushing out the result of him feeling like less than a man in his own household. Talk to your child. Yes, she's going to be mad. She's going to be upset. She is a young woman. Duh. But George really has no idea what his daughter thinks of him. And just keeping everything in mind, George don't really talk. He has no idea what people really think. And that's gonna be his downfall. That's gonna be his downfall. Season 4, I promise you, George about to have, he gonna be drugged up. He gonna be going through withdrawals, and eventually it's gonna force him to have a real conversation with the people in his life, his wife, his daughter, and his son, They don't talk. I don't know. Y'all tell me what y'all think is gonna happen in season 4 as we're rewinding and talking about season 1. But I'm gonna wrap this episode up right here. As always, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave comments in the comments box below. If you got people that only want to listen, make sure you share that Spotify and the Apple Podcast link. You can also find me on Instagram at So There's That Podcast, where I talk about film and TV news and updates. And more recently, an extension to my Instagram, I started written publications over on Substack. You can find me there. The link is in my Instagram profile and in my bio. I will try to remember to link it. I did not link it last time. I already know I'm remembering it right now, and I did not link it. But that's definitely going to be an extension of Instagram, so you can get full reviews and write up for people who like to read. If you got people that don't want to sit here and listen to me, but they like to read, on a train, on a bus, on a long trip, whatever, that's for them. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Kivanshi, and of course on TikTok at Kivanshi, where I do short form reviews on shows that I do not talk about on the podcast. And with that, I will catch y'all in the next episode.